Hey guys, welcome to another video. My name is Ian. Welcome back to the channel, Ian the Reader. Today I have my September wrap-up for you all, in which I'll be talking about 22 books, which is insane. I don't know how it happened. I just got super into spooky season and was just like devouring a bunch of horror books and mystery thriller books. I typically read like a more diverse set of books, lots of different genres, but this month it was like mostly horror, which we'll get into in just a minute. Before we do talk about the books though, I first wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed over the last week or so. I've gotten so much love and so many comments on my favorite books of all time video that I posted last week, and it has been amazing just to hear from all of you guys your favorite books and which of my favorite books you've read. I feel so just like in love with this community more than ever, and I really do just want to say thank you to everyone who is watching my videos and commenting. I love your comments so much. And yeah, hello to all my brand new subscribers. You guys are awesome. But yeah, like I said, I read 22 books, mostly horror and mystery thriller, much more than usual. I typically do read 1 to 2 horror or mystery thriller books a month. This month it's mostly horror and mystery thriller. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start off with the non-spooky season books, get those out of the way, and then just jump in to all the horror and mystery thriller books. So without any further ado, here are the 22 books that I finished in the month of September. First up, I continued my reread of the Stormlight Archive, although I say reread, but this was my first new experience with Stormlight Archive in years. I read Dawn Shard, which is book 3.5 of the Stormlight Archive. It takes place between Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, and it was so refreshing to have a new Stormlight experience. I have loved my reread of books 1 through 3 of the Stormlight Archive, but now getting to fresh material, I am so hyped about it. I'll be reading Rhythm of War next month in November, and it's just, I'm so excited about that book and about the new one, Wind and Truth. That being said, let's talk about Dawn Shard for a second. This was a really fun novella. Overall, I definitely enjoyed it more than the other novella in the series, that being Edge Dancer. I thought that Dawn Shard was really compelling. I thought there were some good mystery aspects to it, as well as I loved the focus that we got on a few different characters, some old and some new. I thought this was a really engaging novella. Not a 5-star by any means, but definitely a really good time, and I highly recommend it if you're reading the Stormlight Archive. Definitely don't skip this novella, Dawn Shard. I don't know how it's going to play into book 4, but I'm sure that it will, and it's a really good time, so you should definitely check out Dawn Shard if you like Brandon Sanderson and the Stormlight Archive. I also decided to pick up a romance book this month, that being Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I got bamboozled into reading the 3rd book in this series because I got an e-arc of it, and it was not originally advertised as being the 3rd book in this Part of Your World series, so I read book 1, and then book 3, and then I had to go back and read book 2, of course. While I was spoiled on some minor things, I say minor, I mean it's kind of major what I got spoiled on, but whatever, going into this book, I still had a pretty good time with it. Abby Jimenez does this one particular trope in multiple of her books now that I am not a fan of. I'm not going to say what it is because it's a little bit spoilery, but yeah, one trope in particular I'm not a big fan of. I do love her chemistry between her characters, as well as the representation that she gives to mental health and a lot of other important topics in her books. But overall, this was not my favorite by her. I think it was pretty good, definitely overhyped, but I'll still read more Abby Jimenez for sure. Next, I continued the Bobaverse series by Dennis E. Taylor with the 2nd book, which is called For We Are Many. I liked this book more than book 1. Overall, I still don't quite get the hype of it. It gets like so much love here on BookTube, and almost every review I've seen of it is like 5 billion stars. People just want to give it all the attention, say it's amazing. I like it. I don't love it yet. Hopefully I continue to like it more and more. Like I said, book 2 is definitely a step in the right direction. If you don't know anything about the series, it's a sci-fi series in which the main character had his brain scanned so that and his brain was going to be preserved, so that when he died, he would eventually be revived when they have the technology for that. He dies, and then it progresses ahead like thousands of years, and he is instead like brought into a kind of like AI, like robot type situation, rather than just being brought into a human body. And things go from there. But this is fun, some interesting ideas. I feel like it's more a template for this author to really like dig into his ideas that he has, rather than a whole lot of great character development. Although I will say the character development in this book was better than in book 1. But overall, like I said, not crazy about it yet, but I'm having a casual good time with it. And the last non-spooky thrillery book that I read in the month of September is Calamity, which is the 3rd and final-ish book in the Reckoner series by Brandon Sanderson. This is a YA sci-fi series. It's like a superhero sci-fi fantasy kind of thing. I liked this okay. Overall, I think the best of the books is probably the first one. The second and third ones are still good, but this series just didn't really do a whole lot of exciting things. I think it's fine. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's great. If you want a YA series with some fun characters, some good humor, and some interesting superpower dynamics, go ahead and check the series out. It gets like a very casual recommendation from me. It's fine. Okay, like I said, that is all of the non-thriller and horror books that I read. Now let's go ahead and jump into all of the spooky stuff. Let's talk about the thrillers first. So the thrillers that I read. First up, we had This Is Why We Lied by Karen Cellar. This is the 12th and most recent Will Trent book in her Will Trent detective series. I really enjoyed this one. You could technically read it as a standalone and probably understand what's going on, but I wouldn't recommend it. One, because it would spoil the 11 books that come before this in that series, but it would also spoil her Grant County series, because this is kind of like a spin-off series to that. So I will be doing a review of the Grant County and Will Trent series sometime in the month of October. When I get around to it, I've been interested in doing other videos recently, but I do like this series a lot. We follow a detective. Really, he's actually in the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in Atlanta, Georgia. A lot of crazy stuff happens. This book is definitely a little bit different as compared to the other Will Trent books. This almost feels like a locked room type of like murder mystery, almost Agatha Christie type thing. Will Trent and another character are at this like lodge, forest home, vacation area, and there is a murder, and then they kind of have to unpack that, and it goes back and forth in time, and a lot of stuff happens. I had a good time with this. I really enjoy the Will Trent books, and I cannot wait for when she writes another one. Then I read The Night We Lost Him by Laura Dave. I have a review for this book that I will link down below. I'm not going to say too much about it here. I wasn't crazy about it though. If you want to hear more of my thoughts though, and whether or not I recommend it, or if you think you would like it, go ahead and, like I said, check out the video that is linked down below to my review. I also read 3 of the books that Jake and Stacey over at The Bookish Drummer and the Chapter Conundrum chose for me to read during spooky season. 3 of those were thrillers, and I also read 2 horror books that we'll talk about in a minute, but not a whole lot. I do not want to share any details on what I thought about these books. Just going to tell you the ones that I did finish in the month of September. Those are The Last Word by Taylor Adams, Confessions by Kane Minato, and You by Caroline Kepnes. Those are the 3 thrillers. And while we're at it, we'll go ahead and talk about the 2 horror books that I read as well, those being Escape by Ian Robb Wright and Mr. Splitfoot by Samantha Hunt. So those are the 5 of the 6 books that they selected for me to read. I actually was planning on reading the 6th one as well, which is Defending Jacob by William Landay, but unfortunately I accidentally, this is really funny, I fell asleep listening to the audiobook by no fault of the audiobook. I was really enjoying it, but I was just really tired. It was like after midnight and I fell asleep listening to it. And the next day I forgot that I'd fallen asleep listening to it, so I pressed play on my audiobook and jumped in the shower, as you do sometimes, and it was like at 95% into the audiobook, and I totally got spoiled for some really big stuff that happened. I couldn't stop it. I was in the shower. And so I had to message Stacey and ask for another book. It is what it is. I may finish that book at some point, but for now I've set it aside. I'd like to distance myself from it a little bit and maybe start over at some point. And the final thriller that I did read in the month of September is The Boyfriend by Frieda McFadden. I have a review for this one as well that I will link down below. I'll just tell you now, I really enjoyed this book though. I thought it was a lot of fun. Not like the most well-written, amazing, adventurous like thriller that you're ever gonna read, but it had some good twists and it was really engaging. So check out my full review down below. Okay, those are all of the thrillers. Now let's jump into the horror books, which is most of what I read this month. It's a lot. The first horror book I want to talk about is The Dome by Kay Roy. I follow Kay Roy on Instagram, and I was really excited when I found out that she was putting out this novella earlier this year. And so I snatched it up and I saved it for spooky season, and I'm so glad I did, because I think this was the first horror book that I read this season, and it totally got me in the mood for more horror. This is, like I said, a novella that follows a family that are moving to an isolated area. They end up moving into this really uniquely structured home called, they call it the Dome lovingly. It's dome shaped. But what's also interesting about this home is there is a giant portrait of the original owners that is fastened into the building, cannot be removed, and it's just a little bit off. They try to cover it up in a couple different ways, but they can still sense it in the building, and things start going awry, and there's some like haunting stuff, as well as a lot of questions on like what's really happening and what's not happening. There's some really tense family dynamics here as well. This was a super engaging novella, such a quick read, and you can get it for super cheap right now on Amazon, so I will leave a link down below. Please go check this book out if you want a quick and really intense horror read. It was a lot of fun. Another novella that I read is Rest Stop by Nat Cassidy. I'll be doing a deep dive into Nat Cassidy's books at some point this month because I love his books so much, but Rest Stop was such a good little novella. So what this is about a man who is on a road trip to go visit a dying family member, and he's driving through the night. He has a lot of things going on in his head, and he just stops for a little bit of a rest stop at a gas station, and he gets trapped in the bathroom there. He gets locked in, and then things start going very, very badly for him. I won't tell you what happens, but this book is insane. Nat Cassidy is incredible. I love his books so much. Like I said, I'll be making a video talking about all 3 of his books that I've read sometime this month, but please check this book out when it comes out. Here is the release date. Snatch it up, guys. You're not going to want to miss this. I read a lot of novellas this month, apparently, because I've got 2 more to talk about. The first of those is Nightfall by Daniel Barnett. This is a self-published horror book that I've been wanting to read for some time. It is the first book in the Nightmareland Chronicles. I believe that's what it's called. But the audiobook for this and book 2 just came out, and it was the perfect time to read it. I was offered an audio copy by the author, and this was so much fun, you guys. I had a really good time with this. It's gotten quite a bit of hype in my corner of BookTube, and it's well-deserved. I think that this book is super atmospheric, very gritty, very edge of your seat, and I have so many questions that I cannot wait to have answered. Hopefully a little bit in book 2, and then onward into the rest of the other books that are currently out. But what's this book about? It's kind of like a post-apocalyptic horror novel. And I don't really want to give too much away. Just know at the very beginning of the story, something happens that kind of sends the world into darkness, and things go from there. We follow a lot of different characters, kind of back and forth in time, and I'm still piecing it together, honestly. This is a great introduction, almost like a prologue to this series, and I cannot wait to read more. And the last novella that I have to talk to you guys about is Sour Candy. I don't know who the author is of this. Keelan Patrick Burke. That's the author of this book. Holy smokes, this book was crazy. It is only like an hour and a half long on audiobook, and if you can get your hands on it, do it, because it is just like so unsettling. So we follow a man who at the start of the book, he's in a relationship with his girlfriend, and he's just going to the grocery store one day, and he sees a mother with her child who is just like throwing a huge tantrum, and he kind of is just like, oh, that's weird, I'm gonna get out of the situation. But then the kid walks up to him and gives him a piece of sour candy, which he takes. I wouldn't have done that, but he did it. And as a result, some things start happening to him, and this book was just so unhinged. I loved it. I cannot wait to read more by this author. Like I said, it's only like an hour and a half long, so please pick this up if you like horror books. It is perfect for this time of year, and it went in some directions that I did not see coming. I'm still thinking about that ending, to be honest. I also read an audio arc for Dina Undone. This is by Deborah K. Every, and I really enjoyed this book. So in this, we have kind of like a haunting situation. So we have a woman who is taking care of her family member who was dying, who was just kind of miserable and awful to her. And through some things that start to happen, she gets attacks on her senses, which is kind of a weird, it's kind of hard to describe, but there is this spirit-like thing that starts attacking her through her different senses, and she is marked by this thing, and she knows that her days are numbered, and things go from there. But this has so much to do with like mental health, on questioning reality, on toxic family relationships. This is a really, really good horror novel that comes out on this date. I don't remember what it is, but this is nice. It's only about 6.5 hours long on audio. I say it's nice. It's not nice. This was pretty dark, but I had a really good time with this. So go ahead and check out Dina Undone when it comes out. It's a good time. I hope you enjoy it. Next, I want to talk about Brother by Anya Alborn. I already talked about this book a little bit in my 10 horror books not by Stephen King video. I'll go ahead and leave that link down below as well. Lots of videos I have to link down below. But anyway, this is really, really good, you guys. This follows a young man who is about 18 years old, and he is in a family of murderers, and he doesn't want to be a part of their murdering ways, but he feels like he can't escape until he meets a young woman who helps him start to question whether or not he has to live in the life that he's currently in. Things go from there. This book is dark, twisted, with an ending that will blow your mind, you guys. One of the best horror endings I have ever read. This is a really good book. If you want to get more into dark horror, I think this is a really great place to start. It is definitely miserable, but it is incredibly memorable. Next, we may as well go ahead and talk about The Talisman by Stephen King and Peter Straub. I read this book. It was fine. It was okay. So people feel very strongly about this book. Either like they love it or they absolutely hate it. And I expected to be in one of those two camps, but I definitely fell in the middle. This book is too long. Let's just put that out there. It is too long. There are some sections in the middle that easily could have been cut, and it just dragged quite a bit in the middle. That being said, there is quite a bit of heart here that I do really appreciate, and there is a good story buried in here somewhere, and I wish somebody would just take some scissors and cut away all the extra stuff and leave me with a good book, but they didn't. So what's this book about? We follow Jack, who is a young boy whose mother is sick and dying, and he believes, he kind of receives this message that if he goes out on this journey looking for this talisman, he will be able to use it to save his mother. To do that, he has to travel to this other land called the Territories, which is tied to the Dark Tower. Don't have to have read the Dark Tower to enjoy this book. If anything, I actually think this would be a great place to start for the Dark Tower, which I will be making a Dark Tower recommended reading order video very soon. But the talisman is very much tied to the Dark Tower, like I said. But yeah, he goes off on this journey, and things go from there. He meets some people who are good, some people who are bad, and things go from there. I liked this book at moments, and I didn't care about this book at others. I won't say that I ever really hated it, but it was fine. Overall, this is a 3-star for me. Very much like middle of the road, kind of on the lower end of my Stephen King ranking. I just wish that it had been better edited. This was fine. Read it if you want to. Don't if you don't. I also read Clown in a Cornfield, the first book in the Clown in a Cornfield series by Adam Caesar. This follows a bunch of different teenagers, really primarily one though, living in this small town surrounded by cornfields. And there is this town mascot called Friendo the Clown who plays a role in this town and in the story overall is kind of like a slasher type figure. Here's my thing with this book. I had fun with it. Not quite as much fun as I expected though. I was hoping for it to be a little bit more like campy and like just goofy. It wasn't. Additionally, I feel like Friendo the Clown really could have just been anything. Like, he doesn't act like a clown, doesn't sound like a clown as far as I know. He is just a slasher wearing a clown mask. And that's the extent of his clowniness. And I'm not scared of clowns, but I like a good clown horror story every once in a while, so I wanted a little bit more from that. That being said, I do like the direction that the author took this book, especially in the second half. It takes a little while to get going, but really from like the 25% mark on, it's just like action, action, action. And a reveal happens around the halfway to like latter portions of the book that I thought was really well done. And I did appreciate that. But overall, I thought this book was pretty good, but not quite as good as I wanted. Next, I want to talk about Dearest by Jackie Walters, which is a Book of the Month pick for the month of October. So if this sounds interesting, go ahead and check it out. I talk about it more in my horror video that I mentioned earlier that is linked down below, but this is a horror novel following a young mother who is kind of on her own. Her husband is in the military and is currently deployed, and she is struggling with adapting to motherhood. She's having issues with nursing, her baby won't stop crying, and she just needs help. And so she sends an email to her estranged mother, who she hasn't spoken to since her wedding, and basically just tells her everything going on and says that she misses her. And so then, a little while later, her mother shows up on her doorstep. But is she alone, or did she bring an evil spirit with her, perhaps? I don't know, you'll have to read it and find out, but this book is really good. It's a horror debut, and I really enjoyed it. If you like haunting type books, kind of like mother-daughter relationship themes in a horror novel, this is a great read. There were some pretty good twists in it as well. One in particular got me pretty good, and some really intense moments that had me gasping. So I really enjoyed this book. Check it out if you're interested. Like I said, it is a Book of the Month pick for October. I think it's a really good read. And finally, I want to talk to you guys about my favorite book of the month. That is We Kept Her in the Cellar by W.R. Gorman. This book completely took me by surprise. I have a full review for it down below. It's completely spoiler free, in which I tell you how much I love this book, but I'm just going to reiterate it here. This book was so good. It is a Cinderella retelling told from the perspective of one of the stepsisters, and essentially Cinderella is a monster. Not figuratively, literally a monster who wears human form. It is very Lovecraftian. It is very grotesque at times, really shocking. There were some moments in this book that just had me disturbed, but I had such a good time with it. It is so good. Please check out my review down below to hear more of my thoughts, because I have a lot of them. Again, it's spoiler free, so check it out down below if you want to, but this novel by W.R. Gorman is so much fun. I gave it 5 stars. I highly recommend it if you have a strong stomach. If you don't, steer clear. But those, I think, hopefully I didn't miss any, are the 22 books that I read in the month of September. Let me know if you've read any of these or if you want to read any of these. Like I said, I typically read a pretty broad group of genres, but for September and probably October as well, it's a lot of spooky stuff, and that's just how it is. So back to your normally scheduled program in November, but until then, be expecting more horror videos pretty soon. Thank you again so much for watching, and to all my new subscribers, welcome, welcome. Hope you stick around. I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.